Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Big Data London webinar. Today, we're talking about creating and fostering a data-driven culture. So I'm joined today by Marco from Google. Hi, Marco. And
Hello.
Alex from Fivetran. Hi, Alex.
Hiya.
And Zara from Looker at Google. So hi, Zara.
Hiya.
So the format's going to be a little bit different today. We're going to have a presentation at the start by Zara and Alex, and then we're moving on to a panel discussion between the four of us where we're going to talk about data-driven culture. As always, these sessions are designed to be interactive. I'll be asking some questions, obviously, during the panel, but if you'd like to put your questions in, there's a questions function at the bottom of the screen. Please send in as many questions as you can. I'll try and ask as many as I can to the panel. If there's any interruption in your service, in your video, there shouldn't be, but just in case, if you just hit refresh in your browser, you'll jump straight back into the discussion. However, without further ado, I'd like to kick off the first presentation. So over to you, Zara and Alex.
Brilliant, thank you. So just a quick check that you're seeing the slides.
Yep, all good.
Brilliant. So yeah, really excited to be here. So what we're going to do is just run you through a couple of slides. We are sort of scratching the surface here in the interest of time, but hopefully it will provide you with some things that you can go away and implement today. So Alex is going to talk through the challenges that we're seeing today. I then want to define data literacy because I think there are lots of different understandings out there, different ways of thinking about it. And then we'll run through the rest of the slides, hopefully providing you with more information around how you can create and foster a data culture at your organization.
Hi, everybody. So my name is Alex James. I head up customer success for Fivetran in EMEA. And what I wanted to do today, just to start the conversation, is talk a little bit about some of the challenges that we have with companies trying to deliver data. So that's one component of the overall strategy that we're going to discuss today. And Zara will take you through a lot of that. But at Fivetran, we found that data professionals and analysts, they really take the lead in a lot of the thought leadership in the data culture. However, companies really struggle with a few kind of optimizations, and some of those things are integrity of data, quality, access, and actually delivery of that data. So we managed to do some research where we had a survey for 500 data professionals, ranging from small businesses to large businesses, so we can get a really kind of good view of what the struggles are. And we can see that 68% of analysts say they lack the time to actually implement the processes to drive, or the ideas actually to drive profit driving decisions. 34% of the analyst time is actually wasted on accessing the data, and then 50% of analysts just don't spend time analyzing the data themselves. So what we actually have here is a problem of just getting access to good quality data that we can streamline into data warehouses so that we can have these very expensive qualified data analysts. We can't actually get them analyzing the data, and that's why Fivetran is all around. You know, we actually want to transfer data from source to destination automatically and automated, and that is one of the key challenges over this whole kind of data revolution. And Zara is now going to go and talk to you about some of the technologies and people that allow us to create this data culture.
Brilliant, thank you. So first of all, like I said, I want to start by defining data literacy. I don't know if anyone else feels like this, but to me, it does feel like a bit of a buzzword, and the same with the phrase, data culture. So a quick Google search will bring up 16 different definitions of data literacy just on that first page. But there are some common themes. So in short, and how I'm referring to it throughout this presentation, is data literacy is the ability to read, understand, and communicate through the use of data. For some, and likely a large part of your organization, data is a new language and it can be really daunting. But just as learning a new language, it's a process and often a slow one, but you can leverage the tools and resources that you have within your stack to make that a slightly easier and more efficient journey. So the reason why I'm talking about data literacy is a key component of having a data culture. And ultimately, that's what helps drive the development of a data culture within an organization. You can't have one without the other. So data experiences, they're meant to make using data the default option for everyone by using, embedded reports, integrations, workflows, applications, taking data to where people spend their day, so it's unavoidable. You'll find that companies that do kind of champion a data-first approach, you'll see that data is used every day in every decision, in every conversation, and there's typically some really good enablement programs across the board to enable everyone to build those skills in reading, understanding, and communicating through the use of data. So the more these two things can work hand in hand, the more efficient your organization will be at moving towards truly being a data-driven organization. So it's all about individuals, and that's something that I sort of focus on when I build the programs for transformation and data culture in businesses today. So providing pathways for everyone. When you learn a new language, and kind of empathy is a really big thing when it comes to driving a data culture, particularly in the your analytical group. When you learn a new language, you start with the basics. So you learn certain words, phrases, and then you build up to reading, understanding, communicating in that language. So you want everyone in your business to be speaking the same language, albeit at varying levels. So again, always understanding that people have a different background, they have a different level of understanding, and that's okay as long as they can understand how to use data for their particular piece of work. You have to start somewhere. So it's really good to understand where people's data literacy is. So I always like my customers to do a survey just to get an understanding of your starting points. You don't want to, you're not going to play a movie or something like that in a different language for someone and just expect them to get it. You might start small and you'll work your way up there. Learning anxiety, it's such a big thing, and it's the biggest thing that I say that we come across when it comes to learning a new technology or learning a new platform. So you want to build relevant materials, contextual materials, so that enablement really is there for different levels. It's a really common assumption to focus on those who are already working with data or have that above average skill with data. The problem with that approach, and again, I've seen this time and time again, you really are widening the gap between the analysts and the end users. So you're actually increasing the reliance on your analysts for day-to-day analytics, taking them away from doing those more complex strategic analyses, which was highlighted by Alex earlier on. So if you can improve everyone in the business, their data literacy score by 1 point, your mean data literacy will be higher than if you just invest in the already data savvy group. So again, looking back at Alex's data, we want the analysts to be spending time on those strategic decisions, finding profit driving activities that the rest of the company can do, rather than literally being a bottleneck, having to produce these end user reports that with the right technology stack could be there and could be ready to go. So change management, this is kind of what my background is in. So I could talk about this for days, but again, in the interest of time, I'm going to condense. I always think this is a really good visual to bear in mind. So what you're talking about here really is an org-wide change. You're wanting to bring in this idea of a data-driven culture. So we're taking everyone in the organization from the current state to our desired state. And change management is about the people side of change. So it's not about the process or the tool or anything else, although I strongly recommend when you're making your choices in your data stack, choosing tools that would allow you to rely on that process of making things easier. I don't get to work with customers anymore, but when I did, I will say that I did really love working with customers who were using Google Cloud technology and Fivetran, because I could assume that the technical foundations were in place to support the people element of having a data culture. And it made my job so much easier because I could go in with the confidence that that had all been taken care of. So back to the people, people are human, obviously. Work isn't their life. They have different learning styles, experiences, backgrounds, anxieties, and you have to be conscious of all of this. And you need to give them the time and space to change. Particularly, I hate to say it, but where we are right now, that's another element that you have to take into consideration: distance learning, a distributed workforce, things like that. So these are all pretty standard change management principles, but again, in the interest of having you go away from this presentation today and have some things that you can think about implementing, sharing the broader vision. Clarity is just the first thing that you have to do and will dictate, your data dictionaries. That again is around clarity. The vision will also dictate your communication plan. So what are the messages that we're sharing? What are we driving towards? And keeping people on board with that vision. Particularly with enterprise customers, if you've got 10,000 people, there's no way that you can, as an individual or one team, support this rollout of this new culture. So find champions, find change agents, create a network, and elevate them by celebrating the great things that they can do with data. And make it fun. So again, it's all about doing things in context. If we take it back to that language, I don't know if anyone else had this, but in France, my father would always make me go to a local market and ask for everything in French. I'm not saying you throw people in at the deep end, but doing something that makes sense to them, not training them on data that means absolutely nothing to them. These are all things that will help that journey. There is a huge amount to be said for the importance of incorporating the data into your workflow. So what tools do you use every day? Just think about it from that perspective. Build the data into that, automate things, have them, inboxes is a great one for sales reps. They love to just come in the morning and see exactly what they need to do, how much money they need to make, how many deals they need to sell. Finding a way to embed into a path so that people aren't jumping around is the best way to streamline and kind of reduce that friction in taking on this kind of new approach. Remember the data, and this is so important. I know I keep saying this, but it has to be hygienic, it has to be actionable, and it has to be fast. So your technology choices are imperative to success. And again, to Alex's earlier point, we really want end users to focus on their data rather than the logistics and the operations behind it. So really simple visual. Build clear reports and dashboards, and please don't build what you think end users need. Talk to the end users, have them work with you. It's very easy to build something and make it, provide it to someone. But if you need something to stick, having engagement from, your customer, effectively understanding their problem and then providing a solution for that problem is the best way to go. Schedules, alerts, again, going back to that inbox or in Slack, that's typically where a lot of people spend a lot of their day. So have helpful information in there that, again, they can use to communicate and share conversations with around that data. Keep it contextual. Someone in operations may not need to see, they have to see probably the things that are in finance, but they may not need to see the very granular e-commerce data. So make sure that people can't, effectively hurt themselves on the data, or you want to build trustworthy experiences. You don't want to make it difficult to find the answer. Otherwise, again, you're going to increase that reliance on your analysts and your data team. It has to be usable. Make it unavoidable. It becomes so much easier for people to make a decision, and encourage people to be comfortable with working with that data and talking about that data in board meetings. And again, very standard change management. Get it baked into company-wide emails and things like that. The next thing is cultivating a community. You can't drive a data culture with just one person or even just one team. Everyone needs to feel empowered, and everyone needs to know what those markers are and what's expected of them. So encourage those cross-functional teams to get together, collaborate on challenges, creating those definitions for the different measures and dimensions so that there's no confusion there and people are in agreement. That's one of the hardest things I found, but it's so worth it once you can push through. And share those successes. So encouraging that knowledge share and enforcing from the top down that data is used to encourage conversations and not shut them down. That provides a really good environment to be able to use data rather than people feeling like it's almost used as a weapon. And to finish, there are so many different things that you can do just to try and chip away at getting people more comfortable with data. But again, it really needs to be contextual. So, for those that are super technical, but don't have a ton of time, an online developer forum, with your own custom information on your sort of internal Confluence page or something like that, something that they can go to, they get the information they need and they go. For those that have a really low technical level, that's the point where you want to be demystifying some of these terms. So training resources, but covering different learning styles so that you can make sure that everyone is included in that. It's a really good way to get going. And then different kind of meetups and having people show what they've been able to achieve and share those wins. So I know I've raced through, but I think hopefully we can cover more stuff within this panel session now.
Perfect. Thanks, Zara. So before I crack on with the panel discussions and asking the questions, I just wanted to bring your attention to a couple of things. Firstly, the on-demand version of this session will be available almost instantly after we've finished. So if you'd like to have another look at Zara's slides, and you can rewind and fast forward and sort of pause on any bits that you particularly want to see again, you can do. Literally just go into and watch the on-demand. The other point I wanted to mention is that this is actually the last webinar now before Big Data London Virtual, the conference. So on 23rd and 24th of September, we're doing our normal conference just online. We'll have more than 120 sessions to choose from. So make sure you register for that and come along. It looks like it's going to be a great event. As I kick off with the panel debate, I thought it would be the fair thing to do to come to you first, Marco. And before I'll ask you the question, but if you don't mind, just before you answer it, if you could just take the time to introduce yourself again, since we've heard from Alex and Zara, obviously. So the question's going to be, what does it mean, or in your opinion, what does it mean to be data driven? What are people aiming for, and why? What's the advantages? What's the big advantages? What's the big fuss about? So yeah, over to you, Marco.
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Andy. So thank you very much. And my name is Marco. I'm the EMEA practice lead for data analytics working in Google Cloud. I spent the last 4 years in Google Cloud, and before that I worked for Microsoft and Accenture. And I think that the question about data driven is a very interesting question, because as we saw before during the presentation question of Zara, for a question like that, that could be multiple kind of definition. What I really like to highlight here is that being a data-driven company means become a company that is able to transform the raw data that they are collecting first into insight and then into wisdom. So we are basically surrounded by data. There's an interesting report by IDC that claiming that the datasphere will grow from 33 zettabillion in 2008 until 175 zettabillion in 2025. So we as an enterprise, we will have access to a huge amount of data. What it's really important is to being able to handle this kind of data and to transform it and to be able to extract insight from that kind of data in order to make a strategic decision based on data analysis and interpretation, and basically being able to take decision based on fact and not on something that could be not real or could be generated by bias, for example. Mm-hmm. Of course, becoming a data-driven company is not just and data, but is a matter of transforming everything into something that will be useful and accessible to everyone within a company and within the different business unit of a company.
Yeah, perfect. And going back to the advantages side, maybe Alex or Zara, I mean, when people are starting this journey, what are they trying to achieve? Why are they doing it in the first place? It sounds hard.
Yeah, so I'll just jump in here on this one. So I guess if we go back, I'd say 10, 15 years, it was all kind of what has happened in the business. It was always just kind of reports that told us what happened in the past. And the need now is to be kind of really up to date and proactive in being able to make decisions, strategic decisions, like Marco was saying. So it's all about just being able to react quickly. And how do you do that? You need to be able to get that insight, make a decision, and commit to it. But again, like Zara was saying in her presentation, it needs to be understood what this data means. So being able to pull all of these data sources together to make a clearer picture. So I'm sure there will be a question about silos in a minute, so I'll answer that back then. But having one central place where you can build that picture. So I'll just give you a story that was kind of happened around 2006, and we were looking at a data set from a sales retailer, from a tech firm, right? And they were selling camcorders, they were selling every white goods and everything like that. And they saw a massive decline in their camcorders and cameras and all that type of thing. We had absolutely no idea. But then if you start looking at other data sets that you can bring in and make a holistic picture, that's actually when the iPhone was coming out, right? So if you start looking about having ideas like that, you can start building this picture of why things are happening, not what has happened, but why, and then you can adjust accordingly.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, I'm going to put a slightly, maybe not a negative spin on the question, but a sort of objections and barriers and things like that before we move on to more kind of benefits questions. The first part of it is that in research that we've done, specifically our fourth industrial revolution report last year, the overwhelming feeling from a lot of people was that a lot of the data transformations that were being attempted were either failing or perhaps weren't delivering the results that were wanted. I'm not saying that it's the data transformation's fault. That's clearly the right idea. But why do you think people are struggling when they're attempting to do this? Yeah, Zara.
I'm happy to take this one. So I can say, so I used to work with enterprise customers, and I think the resounding thing that I came across really is the lack of consideration to the fact that, you can buy the best tools in the world, But if there's no consideration to the people that need to be using those tools, it's very different to, you know, have them be used and be useful. I'm actually talking about this more in another presentation for our Join conference, but in my opinion, so much of the success is actually considered before you even give someone a login to something like Looker that sits on top of all of that good stuff in like BigQuery, the GCP, tech stack, Fivetran, all of that's being done. You know, where I'm at and where I sit with an organization, I need that to be clean. I need it to be actionable. I don't want to be worrying about, okay, if I get 1,000 people on this next week, are there going to be performance delays? Is there going to be data missing? Is there going to be, you know, one of the things that really annoys me is when, you know, there's not a proper process set up, and people are having to wait a day or 2 days for that ETL process to run, when they need a decision there and they need the data to be there. So I think being able to do that and really understanding what the communication plan needs to be, having an enablement track, having learning plans, all that sort of stuff is done before you start getting end users to log in, so that you're able to reduce any of those anxieties and you have a really clear idea of the behaviors that you're unfreezing, molding, and then refreezing.
Yeah, if I can add something on top of that, because I totally 100% agree with what Zara said. The data, becoming a data-driven company means not only being able to embrace a technology that allows you to do things at scale. So cloud, of course, could be an enabler of this kind of transformation. But if you don't have people who are able to master this kind of technology, you're going basically to fail. So it's extremely important to know in advance how to help people within the company mastering this kind of technology and being able to leveraging all the power that the cloud and the data analytics platform give you in your hands, because otherwise you risk to spend money without getting any kind of benefits.
Perfect.
Just one final point on that, if you don't mind. I actually think I completely agree with everything that's been said right now, but there is a mind shift change as well, right? So there's a resistance between kind of a legacy reporting and also then kind of this new way of reporting. So enabling that open mind to not just, you know, to bring extra data sets in, to have different teams, like a centralized teams that serve the wider audience. That's kind of quite a big change to a lot of people that are, I wouldn't say set in their ways, but you know, they've gone through a proven technology as something that works, but it is a completely different mindset change now. So we want to make sure that we address those needs.
Yes. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Coming back to something you said, Marco and Zara and Alex, in fact, in terms of people and, you know, their willingness to change and things. Do organizations need to change their people when they are going to, not necessarily, you know, moving people on and bringing new people in, or maybe, but, you know, do they need to restructure? Do they need to hire new people? Do they need to create different teams? You know, I think people talk a lot about central data teams and things like this. Is this essential? You know, does a data-driven company, a successful data-driven company, look a certain way in your guys' experience?
I can start if you want. So basically, based on my experience, I had the opportunity to work in several transformational, let's say, projects and on a different scenarios. And what I've seen is that it's really, really important to create some sort of a central team, like a center of excellence team within the company, who will become responsible to create, as we said before, the foundation of this new paradigm, of this new technology, and become like some sort of central point where people will be able to learn from. They will be responsible not only for building the foundation and make the technology accessible to everyone. So creating what we call like democratization of the access to the data, but they will become even responsible for enabling people, defining training plan, defining a path for everyone being able to access to the data. Sometimes this kind of thing can be built leveraging the, let's say, resources that are already available within the company. Sometimes, in order to speed up a little bit this kind of process that could be very long, cannot be done just in a couple of weeks. So it could take a lot of time. Sometimes it makes more sense to looking around, searching into the market, the availability of people who have particular, let's say, profiles around data, and thanks to that, people then foster this kind of mentality within the company, help people who were basically working on other kind of things, leveraging this new knowledge, and maybe transform what they are doing, transform their job, and become, let's say, more data driven, like the entire company.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, one of the things that, so what in your question, you say, you know, do you need to say goodbye to some people? In change management, like when you do the kind of qualification and stuff, that's something that you are taught to recognize will happen. What I like to do with, again, I don't work with customers anymore, but what I did like to do with customers is, well, let's do an assessment of the skills that your team have today in their current state, and the skills that we think your team will need to be successful. And then you have different levels of maturity that you can map that to. So to Marco's point, in that transformational stage, yeah, the company probably is in a very different structure, but you're not going to get there overnight. The other thing that's a really good exercise to do, and Alex was saying about the mindset change, again, doing that preparation beforehand, doing an exercise around drivers and resistors, allows you to pull on certain change management levers and certain anxieties to encourage people to move in the right direction. But job specs, like everyone in the organization, again, if you want to be able to say that you have a data-driven culture, in all of your job specs, there needs to be the request for, you know, we're looking for a data-driven individual. Part of the role and responsibilities is using data to make decisions. So it's embedded in every element of your organizational structure. So even from hiring. And again, there are people that want to learn. So if you can understand what their concerns are and what their learning styles are, matching those up, giving people the time, people do learn really quickly. I've lost count of the number of people I've worked with that have been in, you know, sales, marketing, operations, finance, who are now part of that sort of hub in the hub and spoke model, who are now solely in that data team, that center of excellence. They've been promoted because they had an interest. They didn't have a background in data, but they were enabled properly, and they've continued to push forward. So there are opportunities in this shift as well.
Yes. Yeah. And Alex?
Yes. So just one point that I always find with any kind of new function that you're creating, or any new team as well, is that with this kind of shift, it's always good to have a data visionary, somebody that's just got a vision that they want to go somewhere. And that allows you to have somebody that leads from the front, that is really wanting to bring a team along and involve them in their ideas. That's one of the most successful things, actually. Someone with an outright passion. Like, you can hear from Marco and Zara's kind of voice, like they are really into data and they really see where it's going. And I'm not saying you all go off and try and hire everybody on this call right now. But what I'm saying is that you want somebody that really sees and is just maniacally focused on the market and what they want to do and the tools that they can have, because that will be better in the initial stage than promoting what with from within. Like, I love doing that. that's what I love doing in my role. But sometimes you have to bring someone in that can just take that extra step and set everyone on the right path.
Perfect. Yeah. I think that's a very good point. And I suppose with all the points that you're making now, linking back to this, the fostering element of the title of the presentation that we're doing. I mean, this figurehead. Would you say that would be like a chief data officer, perhaps, Alex, or something similar that's becoming a popular job title?
Yeah, it is, and I think you've got lots of different personas, and I think it doesn't necessarily have to be the chief, right? It can be his leadership team, or his or her, sorry, should I say, their leadership team. But it's somebody that's got a clear drive about data. Like I love going to see marketeers, and there's someone there that just knows every tool and every process and technical bit, and you think, wow, I just want to follow this person. And it's that what I would look for. So I don't really mind if you go chief, director, VP. I really don't care about that. I follow people, and that's where that's what I look for.
Yeah, basically someone within the company who is able to influence other people and becoming like data lovers, as we usually say.
and this will help with the sort of ongoing element, obviously, because the transformation is just the start, right? We're talking here about sort of fostering an environment and stuff. And is there anything people should be thinking about? Stage 2. I mean, do they get the company together to talk about data? Obviously, these sort of central excellence teams that you both mentioned, Marco and Zara, sound like a good idea. I mean, have you worked with anybody who's had some good initiatives to keep this going, for example? And Alex, sorry, if you've got any examples.
Yeah, I can go first. Basically, this is a very good approach. And as you said, becoming data-driven company is a journey, and sometimes it could be a very long journey. So some companies are already super agile because maybe they are digital natives. So for them, becoming data lovers is something that is super easy. Meanwhile, for companies that are coming from a legacy environment, that are used to use everyday tools that are legacy, it could be a complex journey. Even because when you have this kind of transformation, there's one point that we briefly touched before. It's really important to recognize that we need to remove the fear in employees to be replaced, because it's important when we share the data lover vision that we are not going to replace anyone. We are going to increase the level of the skills that a person have to enrich, let's say, the person. So it's like an enrichment, not a replacement. And as I said, this is a long journey. It can start with a center of excellence, but then there could be different satellite center of excellence. So in every single business unit, there should be someone who can become like the point of reference, and then can help helping other people getting access to the tool. And of course, the goal is to give to all the people within the company the same ability to get access to the tool, to get access to the data, being able to extract insight. So it's a journey, and it should never stop.
Yeah. So Zara, Alex, have you got anything to add to the sort of helping people sort of foster this environment? Any ideas of meetings, etc., or anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's different. I approach every organization as I don't want to say beast, but I'm going to say it as a completely different beast. So you have to get a read on what the culture is already, and you have to get a read on what the system is. So, you've got the kind of standard political system where you have someone that has an idea and then you get whips to kind of get everyone else on board, or you have an educational system where everyone's involved. So I mean, and I would recommend everyone to kind of take a look and understand that, because there are some things that can go down well, and there are some things that can go down really, really badly. In terms of having consistency, I think most companies have, mission statements and their vision. Again, baking data into that means all those other departments, that's where they're seeking their OKRs from, or kind of outcomes, goals, whatever you call it in your companies. But if everyone is pushing for the same thing, which is incorporating data, using data, then everyone is moving towards the same goal, which I think makes a big difference, rather than everyone doing their own sort of little thing. In terms of the Center of Excellence, a system that I really like, and again, this is completely down to the organization and the structure, but you can have this sort of hub and spoke system that we talk about a lot at Looker. And this is particularly important when you've got sort of hundreds of thousands of employees compared to, 5 or 10 that you can just kind of, when we were in the office, shout across to the other side. Sort of having that Center of Excellence that ensures governance, is doing all of that stuff, so that when you have the data that is democratized, you have specialists in those areas that are able to communicate between the end users and also that Center of Excellence. So they're ensuring continuity, they're ensuring governance is still there, but they're also making sure that there's a direct line for these thousands of people that need to get data, that feel like they're being heard, again, with the right messaging. And that really helps. What we've all sort of said is moving people to this place of not having anxiety around using data, and actually just not realizing that they're using data.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess from my side is just kind of one thing to add to that. I think both answers were perfect, but I think there's always, to continually do this, is that you need to, in my opinion, do two other things, and that's celebrate the win. So the insights that you've had and the analysis that you've done to drive an outcome, actually tie that back to the data. Let everybody know that because we took these actions based on this data and this returned this level of revenue, whatever you're kind of measuring, right? But so you're always celebrating that, so you drive this culture of success. But then also always asking why, like be inquisitive. We're kind of almost programmed from like the 80s to 90s of coming into the workplace and just doing what we're told, right? And it takes us a little while into our careers to start challenging things. And just same with reporting. I think you have to challenge and go, why? What is going on? What does it actually mean? And when you encourage that type of thinking, you end up with teams that just continually want to adopt more, want to kind of really dig into the data. And that's something that I see as being really successful. And it's almost like the team will encourage themselves, right? Because they want to keep going to the next level. No more, have a new test, keep doing A/B testing. And you start bringing these ideas in, and you get much more clarity on new tests. You can move much quicker, you're really proactive. And it's those types of things that allow you to move the needle really quickly and have more success.
Perfect.
And if I can add one extra step based on what we said, because I totally agree with the point of Alex about the celebration is extremely important. And I totally agree with Zara about the difference between a company that is a small one and a company that is a huge one. So it's super important, especially in large organization, identify quick wins. And this is something that can be done at the beginning, especially at the beginning. It's important to identify quick wins that will show to the people, even the ones who are showing resistance to this change, what are the benefits of becoming a data-driven organization, showing them something that will solve maybe some problem that they have in a very quick way without waiting months before delivering in production. So this, I think, it will be extremely important. And once this, let's say, quick win will be delivered, it will be super important to be promoted and then create some sort of positive communication within the company in order to help people embracing this kind of transformation.
Yeah, and I think so I think I showed the change curve in the presentation. There are really great times to do that, and there are not so great times to do that. But well, there's always a good time to share a win, but it's just how you craft the message. But that change curve that people go through, it's not linear. So people will oscillate between, the denial and that sort of thing. I know it's very close to the 7 stages of grief, and change should not be in the same conversation as grief, but it is. But making sure that those wins particularly are being sent through as many mediums as possible at that denial phase. And that's typically when the resistance starts really kicking in, like, I didn't sign up for this, or I didn't want to do this, or we were doing just fine before. And also including with those wins some recognition about the past. So, we were able to achieve this because this team or this department, or we implemented X, and that's how we've got here. To help people recognize that this change wasn't just someone's idea overnight. There was a real reason why this business had to do this, and these are the benefits of doing that. And it helps, again, just enforcing why the status quo wasn't going to help.
Yes, yeah, and I'm gonna come back to you, Alex. Actually, it's kind of on a point that Zara made a couple of questions ago about the reasons for doing this, and the sort of cliched reason for data transformation is an executive team wants to to be able to see their data and drive insights on using tools like Looker, and be able to have a snapshot of their business. How important is the data there? Because I know that's one of the things you at Fivetran deal with. How important is the data and the data quality and things like that to making sure this sort of thing works?
Yeah, well, how long have we got left? Because I forget about this, to be quite frank. It's the utmost importance, right? You have to be able to trust your data, otherwise you can't do anything, right? You just have to make sure you have clean data. And what we do at Fivetran is we go to source, or we go to application. So we can bring in and automate data from any file systems or S3, all of those types of things. But we do integrate directly with source systems. What that allows us to do is to have data that you're recording at source pull directly into your data lake or warehouse or whatever your destination may be. And that is the number one thing in your data stack. I agree that it needs to have a data warehouse or a lake or a BI like Looker to be able to visualize that. But it's like building a house with no foundation, right? You're just waiting for the wind to blow and it'll blow over, right? We need to make sure that data is near real time, accurate to being exactly what is in the source, and still we can still do transformations on it. We can still massage the data as we're kind of transporting the data from source to destination. And at Fivetran, we're slightly different than normal ETL. We're ELT. So we transform once we've loaded the data into a warehouse, which is much more performant. You have more control over your data. So say, for example, you update a new field in your SQL Server database, or new fields in Salesforce. Well, standard ETL, you'd have to have all of your data architects go back in, mend pipelines, and that will take a huge amount of time. And then your analysts won't be able to look at that data for weeks, even months sometimes. So what Fivetran does, and it's kind of one of the key things that really allows this automated turn on, just let it run type of functionality that we have, is that we monitor those schema changes. So you add a new field, that gets put into your data warehouse. You just have that data, right? So without this being too much of a sales pitch, the data is the most important thing, but you need to be able to visualize that, and having something that can transport that data from source to destination and give you full control. You can add, you can remove, whatever you need to do is incredibly important. And it's only been since Fivetran has been around, to be quite frank with you, that we're starting to see this huge demand and surge for automated data pipelines. And that's why Fivetran is here.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm gonna come to. We've got a good question from the audience about governance, which I'm going to come to Zara in a second. Firstly, though, I was going to ask you a question, Marco, about something we were talking about before the other two joined, just before, about COVID. In terms of the effect that that's had. Well, obviously, we were talking about Pret a Manger, but do you think COVID is having a negative or maybe positive effect on people trying to do data transformation? Are they now seeing the benefits more clearly, or are they putting out fires? I mean, from your perspective, how are people acting right now?
I think that at the end, despite the fact that it was like a horrible situation for everyone, I think that this kind of pandemic helped a lot in creating the awareness within the companies that data is the central point of a company, and being able to get access to the data, being able to extract useful insight for the data was pivotal to have a better understanding of their business, better understanding of what will happen in the future, have a better understanding of how to predict the future based on the past data. And I think that based on what I've seen in the last couple of months, I've seen that after the big period of lockdown, I have to say that companies reaching out to us a lot in order to understand better how to modernize their legacy system and being able to get insight in real time. So not only in batch, so they don't want to wait days in order to get access to the information, but they want to get that access. They want to get information in real time. And I think that another point is related to the fact that if we compare how companies are managing data versus how consumers are managing data, there's a lot of discrepancy, because consumers are used to crunch data every second. They're used to this kind of digital native company that are able to crunch a huge amount of data in a very short amount of time. And enterprises, in order to become, let's say, more effective, they need to improve the way they are doing that. And so that right now I've seen an increase of interest in this kind of conversation. So I think that from that point of view, COVID-19 helped a lot, and helped a lot especially in changing the mentality of the people, in embracing a digital transformation within the company.
Perfect. Yeah, it's kind of what I was expecting in many ways. So it's and it's good to hear as well. So the question I was mentioning, you've probably seen it on your screen already, Zara. Is I think it was referring to something you said about governance earlier. Do words like governance turn business users off? Do you avoid using them, or I mean, should there be some kind of accepted language when you're talking to people who perhaps aren't data literate and about data transformation during the sort of change?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. I think and this is where I sort of encourage businesses to use change agents rather than sending the director of data engineering straight into speak with a CSM. It's kind of daunting. Obviously, I think you don't want to dumb things down. It's not like speaking slower and speaking louder, but it is kind of making it contextual, and you want people to understand. So yes, I don't use the term governance to an end user or a business user. the importance of governance is really to an end user is that they can trust the data that they have access to. So that's kind of the tack that I would take, and that's the terminology that I would use. I think as people start moving through their learning paths, then absolutely you can introduce these terms, but it's about being cognizant of who you're working with, what they're used to, and what their terminology is, so that you can marry that up. It's not about just throwing in all this kind of like causation and correlation just to sound great and sound exciting. It's, talking about what they're used to and then using sort of a roadmap almost to get them to understand the terminology that they will be using in the future.
Perfect. I'm going to move on to a last question now, and one that we sort of usually end with, and I'd like a opinion from all three of you, if that's okay. Obviously, people who are watching this will be watching it. They may be on different stages of their sort of data transformation, but it's a fair assumption that they're interested in the process of data transformation. Maybe they haven't started this yet. What's a good piece of advice you could offer these people? And I'm going to start with you, Marco, if that's okay, and we'll move around in the clockwise.
Sure. So first of all, start leveraging Google Cloud, Looker, and Fivetran as solution, of course. Just kidding, of course. No, well, I say that, as we said before, it's not just a matter of technology, but technology is like the main neighbor of that. So it's super important to think about what will be the technology stack, not only for the next year, but for the future. So being able to have invested some time in thinking about what will be the company in 5 or 6 years, and take actionable decision on that. At the same time, it's super important, as we outlined before, to have a leadership team who is thinking about the value that the data can bring within the company, and think about how to define a clear strategy for the company, because we cannot simply say, okay, I want to implement machine learning in everything because I'm sure that we will increase our business. The company needs to really understand what they want to do, what are the KPIs that they want to measure, and possibly they should avoid having tons of KPI, but identify 4 or 5 main KPIs that should basically drive that transformation.
Perfect. And on to you, Zara, for your first tips for people.
Yeah, I mean, it's really echoing what Marco said. You need Fivetran, Looker, and Google Cloud. Now, I think genuinely in line with what Marco said and vision, I think no matter where you are on the journey, actually having a roadmap, a written down roadmap that you can refer to, you can also refer users to, and make sure that you're always iterating on it. So you can have a variety of roadmaps, but something that keeps you grounded in where you're going, what the direction is, and provides clarity of that vision, and is communicated at all levels, to all levels. I think that really helps keep a perspective of what you're doing and where you're going.
Yeah, perfect. And over to you, Anne.
Without repeating exactly what's just been said, I do agree with that. Again, I would say you have to be inquisitive and creative. Always ask why. Let's look at the next step. Always know what's next. That's something that we have at Fivetran as a motto as well. That really just keeps things going. You do have to have your roadmap, but I guess some people will think, well, once you've got Fivetran, Looker, and GCP, we're done with the roadmap, right? No, it's continually evolving, and you need to stoke the fire, right? And that's with being creative and asking these types of questions. So that would be my advice. Perfect.
Well, I think we've timed that almost perfectly, because we're almost out of time. So I've really enjoyed today, and I'd like to thank our panelists, Marco. Thanks, Marco, Zara, and Alex. And it's time for us to say goodbye. So until the next time, which will be after the Big Data London conference now, make sure you sign up. It's goodbye from us, and thank you very much for listening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye.